Did you like Deadpool and Wolverine movie? Well, I've got some comic book recommendations for you. Hi everybody, and welcome to yet another video. Well then, this video is mainly for people who have already seen Deadpool vs. Wolverine, and for those who might not have ventured into the graphic novel medium itself, into the comic books, because if you've seen my review of the Deadpool and Wolverine movie, I mentioned that this film is actually a film that a lot of comic book fans will enjoy. And not only quote-unquote normies, by which I mean people who are only acquainted with the films, either the Marvel Cinematic Universe films or with the Fox films, which, of course, there have been many, or there were many cameos of characters from the Fox movies. Now, again, this video is very much spoiler-filled, so if you haven't seen the Deadpool Wolverine film, just leave and watch it and then come back. So we know that, people like Blade appeared, and Elektra, and Johnny Storm from the Fantastic Four, portrayed by Chris Evans and things like that. But I'm covering all this in the review that I uploaded a couple of days ago. Feel free to check it out on my channel should you wish to do that. However, or close the beginning of the movie, there is this montage of Deadpool traveling through different universes and looking for a Wolverine. And that's probably my favorite part of the film, because I'm a huge fan of the X-Men comic books, especially the 80s and the 90s era, when Chris Claremont was writing it, and other people as well, but also Wolverine itself. He had his own title. It started I think in the 80s, famously also written by people like Larry Hama and Chris Claremont, and he even had his mini series written by Frank Miller and illustrated by Frank Miller, I believe. This is just very fascinating things. But there have been a couple of versions or variants, as they say, of Wolverine that directly refer to either stories and storylines that I enjoyed, or just to a cover of a comic book. So I've got about 4 recommendations for you based on the variants of Wolverine that you were able to see in the Deadpool and Wolverine film. If a comic book fan is listening to this video, this will probably tell you nothing new, but just in case somebody was watching who would be interested in venturing into some of the comic books about the famous Canadian hero Wolverine, stick with me and listen. So, the first the recommendation that I've got for you is Wolverine Old Man Logan. Written by Mark Millar and illustrated by Steve McNiven. In the movie, it was the variant of Wolverine in the hat when he was sitting on the porch of a house and then shot Deadpool with a shotgun. And Deadpool told him that, you're old, or something like, we will be able to get rid of all these wrinkles and stuff like that. So this comic book, I think, also to a certain extent inspired the film Logan. Although it definitely is not of the same story, but it's about an older Wolverine. So this story revolves around Logan in the distant future, and it's very it's a psycho book. It's really something strange if you are a fan of the Marvel superhero characters, because not only do we see old Wolverine, but also old Hawkeye, and Hulk and his descendants. They form this redneck gang in the south, I think, of the United States of America, and they all look like your generic stereotypical American rednecks. It's all very disgusting, and in the end of the comic book, Logan gets to take care of a little Hulk baby. And it's also very chilling to read about Wolverine traveling through the world across the United States and seeing like the remnants of the superheroes that, we all know and love, like dead superheroes. So we know that, for example, Iron Man is gone and Ant-Man is gone, and then I will not really spoil who the main villain is of the story, but let's say that in the treasure trove or in the hall of that villain, we can see trophies of like different superheroes. So there's like, I think, Thor's hammer and Iron Man's like helmet and Captain America's shield. It's all very dystopian. So if you are into dystopian kind of literature, but at the same time superheroes, especially then Wolverine, you will enjoy this. This is a classic at this point, and it's not even that old. I think it's from the beginning of the 20s. I think. Right. So the next one is this one. It is an issue 251 of the Uncanny X-Men. The cover is what I'm referring to, by Mark Silvestri. This has also appeared in the movie, and it is a storyline which revolves around the Reavers. It is, I think, like set in the middle of a story arc by Chris Claremont, but this story can actually be read on its own, without like prior knowledge of anything that had happened before, because this entire story is about Wolverine being crucified on this cross that you can see on the screen, and like reminiscing about the past of the mutants and the future of the mutants, and it's all very like psychedelic laced. This is a part of a grander story. And sometimes it's quite difficult to like trace and follow the story of the X-Men from the 80s and the 90s, because it's very continuous, especially when written by Chris Claremont. So when you start with like the giant size X-Men, and then if you continue all throughout the 80s and at the beginning of the 90s, it's basically one long story. So there's like stories, for example, like the Mutant Massacre and the Fall of the Mutants and Inferno, which is probably one of my favorite ones. And then, of course, as X-Men became more and more popular in the United States of America, more titles that were connected with the X-Men started coming out, like Wolverine, a solo title, or the New Mutants, which at times I enjoyed New Mutants even more than the Uncanny X-Men. And then obviously at the beginning of the 90s, the adjectiveless X-Men started coming out, as illustrated by Jim Lee. And so it's all very worth reading, but if you don't have the time to read thousands upon thousands upon thousands of pages of X-Men comics, I do recommend this, at least this one, like very slim, short issue. You will definitely enjoy it if you like the character of Wolverine. The next is a classic, and I mean, for modern audiences, this might seem dated, and I do recommend you read it just for the historical value. It's the first appearance of Wolverine in the Incredible Hulk issue 181, and I mean, compared to contemporary comics, it's of course, it seems dated. It seems, kid-like, childlike, but it also contains the character of the Wendigo, and you can see where it all started. And I'm a firm believer in, if you're into something like in superheroes, like anything, and this also concerns superheroes as well, I think you should know something about the history and about the origins. I have read this issue like multiple times just out of fun. I mean, I don't own the original one. I think that would be quite pricey. But yeah, it's good for what it is. It's got a historical value, shall we say? And the last one that I have got for you is the Age of Apocalypse. And that might be a little bit more harder read for a normie, because this story came out in 1995 and went for, I don't even know 1 year, 2 years. And it's basically from an alternative reality. So in the movie, it was just, if you look at the screen, there was this Wolverine who didn't have one of his hands. And instead of this, he had like a stump, a metal stump. and this very, very crazy hair. It was awesome. And once again, it is kind of dystopian, because there was a character who traveled back in time to kill Magneto, and he didn't kill Magneto. He didn't manage to kill Magneto. He wanted to kill Magneto because, you know, for all the atrocities that Magneto did. But he killed Professor Xavier instead. And that caused Apocalypse to attack 10 years before, like, he originally did attack in the 616 universe. And that's how it started. I mean, this wasn't a spoiler. You can find this, like, in every summarization of the story. That's how the story starts. And then you can see, you know, all the changes to the main characters. The relationships of the characters changed as well. You know, Wolverine has this very different relationship with Jean Grey and things like that. And it's very all, you know, it's an action-packed, extremely well illustrated story that I do recommend you read 100%. So these were my 4 recommendations of you know, like X-Men and Wolverine comic books to read. If you were wondering what these Wolverine's variants were at the beginning of the Deadpool Wolverine film. Right, so let me know in the comments down below what you think. And that will be all. Thank you very much for watching, and I'm out of here.